This is OwlUp, where learning happens in minutes, not hours. For a deeper journey, explore all our courses at owlup.co. Now, let's dive in. Welcome to Chapter 1 of What Happens When You Die. We're kicking things off by diving into what scientists actually know about consciousness and what happens to it when we die. We'll explore the fascinating theories researchers have developed about how our minds work and what that might mean for our final moments. Let's get into it. Right now, somewhere in a hospital, a person's heart has just stopped. Yet, inside their skull, their brain may still be firing in complex patterns, and they might later recall a vivid, out-of-body journey. Is that a final brain glitch, or a clue about what awareness really is? We tend to think of death as a clean line, alive on this side, gone on the other. But biology doesn't actually draw that line for us. Doctors, laws, and measuring devices do. Over the last few decades, intensive care units have quietly become laboratories where this border is studied in real time. Monitors track blood flow, oxygen, and electrical rhythms as they unravel, revealing that shutting down is a staggered process, not a single moment. Heart function, breathing, and complex brain signaling each fade on their own timetable. And with modern tech, some can be pulled back while others cannot. This is why a person can be gone in a living room, but revived in an ER. By watching thousands of these borderline cases, researchers have begun to map which patterns reliably vanish for good, and which sometimes flicker back, carrying strange reports of tunnels, lights, or meetings with the dead that science is now trying to decode. In the last 20 years, new tools have quietly changed what we can see at this border. High-density EEG caps, portable brain oxygen sensors, and ICU recorders that log every heartbeat and electrical spike let researchers replay a person's final minutes frame by frame. They've learned that not all brain regions fade together. Some deep hubs keep pulsing while outer areas fall quiet, and brief islands of organized activity can appear even as the body fails. These same devices now guide decisions about when to keep pushing with machines, when to cool the body, and when to accept that no meaningful return is possible. When researchers zoom in on those last minutes with all this hardware running, a clearer sequence appears. Consciousness seems to depend on a very particular style of brain activity. Large-scale, coordinated signaling between the cortex on the surface, the thalamus deep in the center, and the dense bundles of fibers linking them. When blood flow drops, these loops are among the first fragile things to go. Local neurons can keep crackling for a short time, but the kind of integrated, information-rich activity needed for experience collapses quickly. One way scientists track this collapse is by measuring how complex the brain's electrical patterns are. Instead of just asking, "Is there a signal?" they ask, "How unpredictable and varied is this signal over space and time?" Methods like Lempel-Ziv complexity and the perturbational complexity index compress EEG data the way a zip file compresses text. Highly regular, repetitive activity shrinks easily. Rich, differentiated activity does not. Across anesthesia, severe brain injury, and the dying process, when this complexity sinks below a certain threshold, people stop forming memories and stop responding in ways that indicate they are having experiences, even if some raw electrical activity remains. This is where clinical categories matter. In potentially reversible coma, some of these long-range networks are offline, but others can be coaxed back with time, cooling, and support. In brain death, repeated tests show that the brainstem, cortex, and their connections have failed beyond return. No blood flow, no evoked responses, no sign that stimulation can propagate through the system. That's why, across most of the world, brain death, not a silent heart, sets the legal endpoint. Near-death experiences sit inside this landscape, not outside it. In studies like AWARE-1 and AWARE-2, people revived from cardiac arrest sometimes describe life reviews, bright presences, or floating perspectives. Their stories are taken seriously, but the timing lines up with pockets of residual or restarting neural activity, often during resuscitation, rather than with complete shutdown. Drugs, extreme G-forces on fighter pilots, and direct stimulation of regions near the temporal and parietal junction can induce strikingly similar sensations, suggesting that the machinery for these journeys lives in the brain itself. Yet even with finer measurements, science stops at the boundary of what its tools can test. It can map when organized activity that supports experience vanishes. It cannot answer whether anything beyond the measurable persists, or what that would even mean in physical terms. On questions of an afterlife, the data are silent, and for now, that silence is exactly what the science can honestly report. A helpful way to ground all this is to look at edge cases where the usual sequence is stretched. Deep hypothermia surgery, for example, deliberately cools patients so much that circulation can be stopped for close to an hour while surgeons work inside major vessels. During that window, people meet textbook criteria that would normally mean no return, yet rewarming can bring back not just movement, but intact personality and memory. Drowning in icy water shows something similar. Children pulled out after 30 minutes have occasionally recovered with surprisingly little damage because low temperature slows the biochemical cascade that usually kills neurons. On the other side are disorders of consciousness that blur our legal lines. Some patients diagnosed as vegetative show hidden signs of command following when their brains are probed with clever mental imagery tasks. They don't wake up when asked, but patterns inside their heads change as if they're answering yes or no, forcing medicine and ethics to rethink what it means to say that someone is truly gone. Future tools may treat the end of life less like a cliff and more like a coastline that can be mapped in detail. We might time organ donation the way farmers read the sky for just right rain, balancing respect for lingering activity with the need to save others. As brain-computer links get better, some people now called unreachable could signal back, quietly shifting laws, rituals, and even how we talk to loved ones in their final hours. In the coming years, the most radical shift may be how early we start this conversation. Advanced directives might one day include not just medical preferences, but choices about how long to support borderline brain states, like setting a dimmer switch rather than a simple on-off. That could turn our final chapter into something we co-author, instead of something merely endured. Before next week, ask yourself, if the brain is likely generating my conscious experience moment to moment, what's one daily activity, like brushing my teeth, walking, or eating, where I can deliberately notice how sensations, thoughts, and emotions appear and fade, as if I'm watching consciousness work in real time? When I think about death as the permanent end of this stream of experience, as the scientists in the episode suggest, what specific fear or hope comes up first? And what does that reveal about how I'm actually living right now? If near-death experiences might be explainable by the brain under extreme stress, how does that change the way I treat this ordinary, non-extreme moment? What's one concrete choice today, a conversation, a risk, a boundary, that would make this finite stretch of consciousness feel more honest or meaningful to me? This was OwlUp, your daily step forward. To keep learning with structured courses and more insights, go to owlup.co. Until tomorrow!